For calling me. Throughout this debate, we have heard perspectives of the troubles and trying to put the current situation of Northern Ireland into a new perspective. And I think that's been very valuable. There's, I think, the very thoughtful contribution by the member from Eastbourne, whose own constituency bears the scar of Irish terror. And of course, as each member walks into this chamber under the scarred and broken ramparts of the Churchillian Arch and sees above us the memorials to Robert Bradford, Terry Neve and Ian Gow, I think we're all reminded just how far we have come. It is a miracle. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It is a miracle. The member for East Belfast mentioned the pride that she has growing up as a Belfast woman and a citizen of Northern Ireland, and understanding where she has come from and where her city has come from. And I think all of us on these benches, whose formative years were spent with the average body bag count of being 80 or 90 souls sent into eternity by the assassin's bullet, that was our daily news intake as we grow up. And we only now, in normal times, and thank God they are normal times, actually realise how perverse and awful, and indeed how harrowing a vista that actually is to look back upon. I, as a father, had probably the most happiest occasion when my 14 or 15-year-old daughter said to me one day, when she'd started her GCSE course, "Daddy, what are the troubles?" I'm telling you, as a person who knew when he was 14 or 15 growing up in Northern Ireland what and how bloody the troubles actually were, that was a great question to be asked as a parent. A powerful question, and something which should spur us on as fathers and grandfathers in this house to witness and hope that our children and our children's children never, ever, as a member from East Belfast, go through or witness that awfulness again. And I think it is important that we do have that perspective, because the country that we live in now and its current security needs are very different, but they still are incredibly needy. And I think that we should come to those things and we should face them, and we should face them head on. The current spending round, the police have been given a sufficient resource. We campaigned for that before the devolution of policing and justice powers were handed over. We made it a red line, and we achieved that. And that was job done, because it was essential to put our security services on a fair and good footing, so that they could actually take us forward hand in hand with economic progress, with political stability, and of course with security gold plating. We needed all of that. And we now, however, are at the point where the current Chief Constable and his senior team have to now make the new bid for the new spending round. And it is being made in a leap of faith. The police, when they do their current calculations, aren't stepping forward with absolutely clear and understood figures from the Secretary of State and from the Northern Ireland office and from the Government of Northern Ireland. They simply are making a leap of faith, and they have to make sure that they retain the same spending ability that they got in the last spending round, that they will get that in the future. Otherwise, they will be under severe pressure. Now, there have been members on the Police Authority in Northern Ireland, or sorry, not the Police Authority, the Police Federation in Northern Ireland, called for an increase in policing numbers. Now, the member for East Antrim and myself served on the police board. I think we were two of the longest serving members on that board for about 7 years. And we constantly heard that call. But we saw the police service drop from 12,000 to 7,000 members. It's now currently at about 6,800. The fact of the matter is that this week, the police are going to have to start recruiting about 300 more new police officers. They haven't asked for that permission yet. They're doing it as a leap of faith, but because of the new training mechanisms that are in place and the long gestation it takes to get an officer from probationer right the way through to active serving member on the street, they need to push that button now. And they're doing it as a leap of faith because the money isn't there to recruit an additional 300 officers. But they're going to be going to the board and asking for that. And I believe we in this House and the Secretary of State and across these parties, we must encourage them that not only can they ask for that, but they will have the resource to actually deliver that so as they can get the full-time numbers of police officers back up to about 7,150 members. And I think we should look at that. Why do we need those members? And why do we need that money? Well, we need to sustain our security capability in very practical means. The air support unit that the police service runs requires a huge amount of resource to keep it in place. It does the air traffic patrolling that allows, it does the air patrol that allows them to watch people as they travel along certain roads. Let's face it, the main road from Dublin, from the border in Newry through to Belfast, is smugglers' paradise. Multi-millions of pounds worth of contraband cigarettes, of fuel that has been laundered, fuel that has been smuggled, comes up and down that road every single day. It is a multi-million pound enterprise by gangsters and criminals, and the police need the air support as well as the on-ground support to ensure that they can try to prevent that and try to stop it. There are other things that can be done, but we'll come to them later on. The police also need to ensure that they have money for close protection. They need to make sure, as the member for North Belfast said, that they have money in place for surveillance. One of the things that galls many of the members in this House is that we know that there are certain individuals in Northern Ireland who are responsible for particular crimes. They haven't been able to get the evidence on them, they haven't been able to get them successfully prosecuted, and they're loose on our streets. Now, there's a certain person on the streets of the mainland that all effort is going in to make sure that he is that there's proper surveillance over him, that he is properly tagged, and that they can make sure that at the first opportunity they'll kick him out of this nation. Well, I actually think we need the same sort of strict surveillance criteria and strict surveillance equipment put in place on certain people operating in Northern Ireland. Yeah. There's one particular individual in Northern Ireland who is responsible for 5 murders. He's been brought to trial on 3 of those occasions, and by a technicality has got out. Now, that's the way the law works, and we all accept the rule of law. But it galls us that the police do not appear to have sufficient resources to watch that man day and night, so as the next time he tries to plan what was planned on the Lurgan bypass, he's stopped from doing it. And I hope that the police get the surveillance and the equipment and the money they need to undermine those individuals, because any diminution in the ability of the police to do their work has a morale-eating impact not only on police officers but on the entire civilian population of Northern Ireland. The police have to balance their books this year, but they can only do that in the knowledge that they're not walking forward in a leap of faith hoping they will get resource next year and in the next government spending round, but that they will have adequate resource to do the actual job. I did mention that there's actually been a bigger churn within policing in one of my earlier interventions. There are more police officers now resigning after a short policing career than has ever been the case. Now, it's not a spike yet on the charts and on the system, but it's starting to identify a problem that police officers who used to see it as a calling, that they would come into policing and they would spend 20, 30 years or more in the police service serving their community. The new regime that we have now encourages police officers to actually see themselves as a short career and then go into business or management or any other profession. And that aspect has an impact on the police ability to hold the recruits and to do their jobs. And if that becomes a problem in the future, then again we will need the resource to address that. The police will need resources to police the G8 summit. They certainly will. They will need resources to police the Police World Fire Games. And of course, as we approach 2016, they will certainly need a resource to police any public disturbance or anything that arises as a result of those who would try to turn memories into the commemoration of the Somme, or those in the south of Ireland who try to turn memories into the commemoration of the Easter Rising. Those things will present policing challenges. And we've therefore got to make sure that the police have adequate resource to address those points. But each year, Deputy Speaker, we spend £37 million of policing money on policing the past. And we have to do that because in order to get justice for what happened in the past, we have to gather evidence, pursue those cases, and hopefully bring people to trial. But that is a huge draining resource that does not affect any other part of the United Kingdom when it comes to policing. Next year, we will spend £6 million on the Historical Inquiries team. We will spend £6 million in the current year on inquests. And we will spend £25 million on legacy investigations. That's current detectives involved in policing the past. That has to be done, but it's a cost. I want to see the current and the future policed, but I know that we have to continue with this project of getting through these cases and making sure that we bring justice to people who rightly have questions that need to be answered. But I think we have to recognise that if that huge demand is there, then the police can't step forward on a leap of faith when it comes to their budget for next year and the next government spending round. They have to know now that they will be adequately resourced to police those issues, to furnish HET, inquests and legacy investigations, and to get on with dealing with the needs of tackling sex trafficking, of tackling other serious and organised crime in Northern Ireland, and dealing with those issues. Now, one of the biggest crimes that goes on in Northern Ireland is fuel laundering. I'm glad that our Select Committee, Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee, is actually studying this. This is a multi-million pound crime, which, as I said, there's a highway, the A1, between Newry and Belfast that is a smuggler's paradise, where they smuggle fuel there every day. We need more resource put into that to prevent that from taking place. We need resource put in to find a proper fuel marker that will diminish the nonsense that we currently have of HMRC officers pouring orange dye into fuel and saying, "There, the problem's solved." It's not solved. I don't care what colour they pour into it, whether it's orange or green. It's not solved pouring dye into fuel, because all you do is launder it out of the fuel. And the more you pour in, the more kitty litter they need to steal to launder it through the process. So you just perpetuate this cycle of crime. We need a new fuel marker in our fuel as soon as possible to stop the crime, and therefore put those gangsters out of business. Those gangsters who just this week in Belfast had a huge petrol station dug up, owned by a man in South Armagh, dug up and the tanks removed. Will he be charged? No. Will he go to jail? No. How much has he stolen from your government, from the Secretary of State's government? Tens and tens of millions of pounds this year alone, and he's getting away with it. Well, we need to have that matter addressed, and addressed urgently. Of course it will.
Does the honourable gentleman and fellow member of the Northern Ireland Select Committee also agree with me? What we need to also have is some more convictions as well, because people just end up by behaving in this kind of way. They are stealing money out of the Treasury's pockets, and we need to make sure that they actually get sent to prison a bit.
The gentleman is absolutely right. I mean, the figures are startling. This year, in these 12 months, the Treasury will lose £3 billion in unpaid revenue. £3 billion! That's a third of the entire Northern Ireland budget. They lose £3 billion of unpaid revenue on cigarettes because of smugglers. It's an incredible loss to the Exchequer. How many people will go to jail for that? Zero. A big fat zero. Why? Because they do not prosecute these people. And the latest thing we now are being told is, well, we'll do our best to get more of these people behind it. If you do not have the evidence, i.e. if you're not able to put in surveillance, if you're not able to trap these people, if you're not able to put in proper markers, you will never have the evidence sufficient to convict them. In the last 11 years, of which the government has lost billions of pounds in unpaid revenue because of fuel smuggling and cigarette smuggling, the authorities have prosecuted, I think, less than 7 people, and none have gone to jail. That's an indictment on those people at the top, HMRC, who should be taking this on and taking it on with a vengeance.
Yes. I thank the Honourable Gentleman for giving way. Does the Honourable Gentleman also feel and agree that more personnel, HMRC personnel available at the airports, for instance Belfast City, also Aldergrove, where the staff tell us and tell elected members that there isn't enough staff there to catch all those available? Does he feel that extra staff there would be a start in that job to try and catch it?
Well, the member raises an interesting point about staffing numbers. I understand that the current special investigation team in Customs is 5 people. 5 people dealing with a multi-billion-pound crime going on in Northern Ireland. And those 5 people are brilliant people. They have threats in their lives because of the work they do and because of the people they approach. But they're being hampered in the work that they do because the government has decided that it's important to focus on VAT fraud. That's an office desk job, going through VAT forms and determining whether or not there's been fraud in VAT. Well, that's a disgrace, and we need to get on with it. We need to make sure that these people are properly resourced in the job that they actually do. Mr. Deputy Speaker, with the earlier members, history, I should say, the lesson of history is that you study history in order to learn the lessons, not to repeat the mistakes that have been created in history. And I think it's very, very clear that we've been able to see there were many mistakes made down through the last number of years, but Northern Ireland has turned the page, that there's a new chapter, that we're writing it, people in this House are helping to write it. There is a new beginning, it's a bright dawn, it's much better, it's a brighter society that we're living in, but there still remains those hurdles that we need to jump, and we can only jump it if our security services are properly resourced and we go forward in a spirit of proper togetherness to make the changes that are necessary.